20 minutes later, Ben Zayton shows himself. He shimmers into sight just where Juno's 1,000-yard stare had been pointing for the 10 minutes since he slumped back into his kitchen chair with a glass of whatever was within closest reach from the cabinet over the fridge. "So, that was," he says, "something, really something, Super Steel. How long were you there?" "I heard most of it." Ben gingerly takes the seat across from Juno, like he's not sure Juno needs to think of something better to call the man than the angel. The angel isn't about to show up and claim it at any second. "Thanks for the warning when you came in, by the way. Nice and subtle." "I didn't want you spooking him before I had the chance to find out what he wants." Juno knocks back half his glass in one go. "For all that's worth. You saw how well it went." "I thought it was going pretty well until you blew a gasket." "Until I what?" "Why'd you get so pissy all of a sudden?" Ben props his chin up on his hands, big curious eyes bright in his translucent face. "Warlock. It's..." Juno shifts uncomfortably. It feels wrong in his mouth. It tastes like things he can't even try to forget. "I don't like that word." "Because you're a witch." "Yeah. No, because I don't want to be that either. Thanks. Mom was a witch. I'm also a witch," Ben says, quick like he's stealing Juno's joke out from under him, even though it isn't a joke. It never has been. "That's not the point. Whatever I am, I'm not that. You know what that word means." "Do I? Don't tell me you forgot." From the look in his brother's eye, Juno knows they both remember all too well, but he's still going to make him say it. "That's what Mom used to call him." "Who? You mean the warlock who broke into our house, didn't take anything, and ruined all our lives?" Benton shrugs like their topic of conversation didn't get him killed. "Never heard of him." "Come on. Look." Benton gets up and comes around the table. He actually walks on the floor, doesn't float over and through it, which is how Juno knows he's serious. "Whatever you are, and whatever some guy calls you because he doesn't know any better, and he's trying to impress you, you'll never be him. Or her. You know that, right?" "You don't." Juno would shrug Ben's hand off his shoulder if it were really there, not just a projection from wherever he goes when he's not haunting the only living relation he has. Nowhere, is what he's told him before, but thinking about that for too long makes Juno's head hurt. Do you know what the word necromancy means, Juno?" "What?" The question throws Juno enough that he almost forgets to keep scowling. "It doesn't technically mean raising the dead. It means learning from them, listening to them, getting advice or hints of the future. The dead are said to be pretty wise, if I do say so myself." "Are you saying you can predict the future?" Juno raises an eyebrow, tries not to think about the kid Benton used to be, the one whose face he'll always wear, who wouldn't shut up about his favorite fun fact of the week and somehow turned it into a rousing speech about why it meant they had a moral obligation to break into the abandoned bodega or see what would happen if they scratched sigils into the thrusters of see what would happen if they scratched sigils into the thrusters of Mick's hoverbike. He thought he was pretty wise back then, too. "I'm saying, if I have to spend my afterlife moping around your grody apartment, the least you can do is listen to me." "Grody? Tell me the last time you vacuumed. It's okay if you need a minute to think about it. I'll wait." "Fine," Juno concedes. "What's your great goddamn wisdom?" "If you have a life," Benton catches Juno's gaze and keeps it for long enough, at least to give him a crooked, sincere smile, "the galaxy doesn't stop turning just because you want it to. Being alive means things change. You meet new people and you grow and you build the kind of life you want, and sometimes that means going after the things you want instead of letting them jump out the window." "You saw that too, huh?" Juno mutters. "Wait, hang on. What are you? He's been stalking me, Ben Zayton." "You stalk people every day. It's kind of your job." 1. No, it isn't. Juno counts off on his fingers. 2. Who said anything about going after him, or whatever? "Come on, Super Steel." Ben rolls his eyes, and Juno feels a spike of that special spiteful rage that only siblings can inspire. "It was one thing when I just had to listen to you obsessing over the guy, but after this romantic vignette, if you don't go for it, I will." He's not your type, Juno grumbles. Yeah, that's the only problem with that. What do you want me to do, Benton? Track him down again and say, hey, you stopped me from getting killed a couple times, and then I caught you prowling my neighborhood. Can I buy you a drink? Juno shakes his head. I still don't know his goddamn name. That sounds like an icebreaker to me. You're halfway there. And, Juno won't let his brother's optimism stop him, not when he's on a roll. And another thing, curses. Juno opens his hands towards Benton in a gesture that would have no conceivable meaning to anyone other than his twin, a prompting, well, that asks him to make the same connection Juno just did, or jump to the same conclusion at least. You've been foiled again? No, he asked about curses. Juno starts pacing, making 3/4 of a lap around the room before Benton starts floating after him. He could have asked me about anything. He was trying to find out how I found him. Why wouldn't he start with tracking spells, or hell, the fire he saw me make? Sure, there are millions of things he could have asked about, but he chose curses. You said he obviously didn't know enough to be the one. Even if he's not behind it, that doesn't mean he's uninvolved. Juno stops abruptly enough that Benton floats halfway into his arm and snaps his fingers. His client. Who's he working for? That must be it. It who? Whoever cursed Agate Zeptiro, whoever killed her. He exhales long and exhausted with himself mostly. He was too busy drooling over a nameless pretty face to ask these questions when the guy who could answer them was actually there. I didn't even ask if he recognized her name. God damn it. Juno turns and pushes his forehead flat against the wall. The gentle thud is like a short preview of how he ought to punish himself better later. So what are you going to do about it? I'll find him again. Juno turns toward his work table, already reaching out the last few acid green leaves at the bottom of the bowl still sitting out from an hour ago, and trips over his own feet. Juno, Benton's voice says, full of concern. Shit. Juno pushes up against the back of the chair, having caught himself on it. I'm fine. You're not. Benton puts himself between Juno and the spell components. It's a symbolic gesture. They both know Juno could reach right through him. They both know he won't. You've been burning through spells and barely sleeping. You have to let yourself recharge. Juno huffs. Come on, you and I used to get up to more on a weekend than I've done in the last month. But I'm not here anymore, Juno. Benton's eyes are wide, his voice is emphatic and almost desperate. It knocks the wind right out of Juno. Ben, we made each other stronger, but you can't bounce your signal off me like when I was alive. He blinks, his hand hovers in the air between them, reaching out but afraid to close the gap for fear of the reminder that he can't. You're on your own. The sadness in his brother's voice is enough to crack the last bit of foundation keeping Juno standing. He slumps down into his chair, face in his hands. The last few days' Gatling gun stressors all catch up at once, like a physical weight on his shoulders. I know, he says. It comes out broken, nearly a sob. Juno is so goddamn tired. Damn it, I know that. I feel it every goddamn day, okay? And I try to ignore it because at least you're here, sort of. I can see you and talk to you, but I miss you when you're right in front of me. Juno sniffles. It's just really hard. He raises his head after a handful of long breaths. The tight ball of worry in his chest releases when he sees Benton there still. He had panicked just then, that his brother would vanish in the seconds he looked away, in the time he wasted being vulnerable. There is no pity in Benton's expression. Juno neither expects nor fears pity from his twin of all people. He never has, but is still a weighty reassurance to see understanding reflected back in those translucent eyes. This is far from the first time they've talked about this. A glance, a gesture, a broken piece of a sentence are enough shorthand by now to skip through an hour of difficult conversation. Juno sighs again, somehow lighter. Get some sleep, Super Steel, Ben says gently. You can run all over town looking for your mystery man in the morning. Yeah, Juno nods. He makes his way to the doorway of his bedroom before he stops, turns, and says, Hey, Benslayton? Juno? Can you... He clears his throat. Can you stick around tonight, long as you can? Benton smiles softly. He swings over himself over the back of Juno's couch, not with any of the gravity-defying flips he's fond of, but the simple movement of a person made of mass and matter, and sprawls over the cushions with his hands clasped behind his head. "I'll be here when you wake up. You have a case to solve after all, Mr. Detective Steele." Juno breathes a laugh out through his nose. "Night, Benton." "Good night, Juno." His word, Benton is still perched on the back of the sofa when Juno gets up the next morning. He smiles even as the light from the window cuts sharp striations through him. He's faded, the way he gets before he goes nowhere for a while. He'll be back. He's always back. But Juno feels selfish all the time for begging him to wait all night in a quiet apartment. Christ, he didn't even leave the TV on. How his brother doesn't go stir-crazy trapped in Juno's dingy apartment, or if he really tries, Juno's dingy office, is a wonder. "What's the game plan?" he asks as Juno brews a pot of sawdust coffee. "I've got an idea about checking the PI registry," Juno says, "if I can find a way in." "Rita?" "Probably Rita." "What about, Dominic Dominguez?" Rita's hair and Rita's glasses pop up over the top of her monitor, sending a questioning look at Juno. "Gee, boss, a lot of these names sure are alliterative." "Dominguez. Nope. We ran into each other on that case where I got shot in the neck. Who knew birdseed stuffed down a barrel of a rifle would pack such a wallop?" "The other time I got shot in the neck," Juno stretches an arm over his head, adjusts himself on his own waiting room couch. It's hell on his back, but he dragged it off the sidewalk, so he really doesn't have room to complain. "This is getting us nowhere, Rita." "Well, sorry, boss, but if he ain't registered with the Hyperion PI registry, I don't know what to tell you." He hears the familiar sound of Rita typing, like a creature with too many legs running in circles on a hardwood floor. "I can get into Olympus Mons' system, but it might take me a minute on account of how they don't sell personal information to quite as many private bidders. Still a lot, obviously, but one at a time most of the time." "Wait." Juno sits up, ramrod straight. His back twinges and says to kindly go fuck himself. And he'd respond in kind if he weren't too busy telling himself, "I'm an idiot. Did you leave your blaster on the stove and the stove on again? Because I keep saying you really shouldn't get renter's insurance." "We've been looking in Martian registries," Juno groans. Boss, you know we're on Mars, right?" "Yeah," Juno says, "but he wasn't until recently." "Superstition and nonsense," he'd said, like some highbrow Terran planetist or a tourist from Io hopped across the asteroid belt to see how silly the backwater Martians are. "His client must have brought him in from off-world," Juno continues. "Makes sense if they're investigating me. Just about every PI in Hyperion either has it out for me or, I know how that sentence ends, Mr. Steele, and you better not finish it." "Guess I'll just have to do it the old-fashioned way." Juno runs a hand across his face. "Again." He offers a silent apology to Benton and searches inside himself for those strings of tension that spark into his blood and out to the world when he snaps them. He can't find any, mostly. He just feels tired and empty and ramming his head into walls at every turn. Benziton was right. Juno can admit that. In the privacy of his own head, and considering his brother did die and all, it seems rude not to give credit where credit is due. He has practically forgotten where his limits are. Doing this kind of thing more than once in 2 blue moons, like he'd done for the past 2 decades, takes a lot out of Juno. And here he is, without his twin to make him stronger, better, to pick up the slack where he can't cut it on its own. But, like a lot of things where Juno Steele is concerned, he doesn't have a choice, or, if he does, any alternative will eat him up inside to the point that it's really no choice at all. The skin of thick leaves splits under Juno's fingers, his eyes closed. All he gets back is static. Juno furrows his brow and focuses harder, digging deeper underneath all the layers of him, screaming not to try it at all, searching for the bright core of him, the thing that makes the universe sit up and listen in the first place. Feels far too much like after-school lessons in Ma's dark, bourbon-stinking room. She insisted it wasn't about force or energy at all, not really, that he didn't need any of it if he really knew who he was and where he came from. Oh, Juno knows those things. They're exactly what he's afraid of. He balks in the end and searches instead for the frayed ends floating around wherever he keeps a thing other people called magic. He can tie them together, he can take each broken string and break it more if he has to. Hyperion City is negative, projected on the inside of Juno's eyelids. A burst of recognition here, a speck there, and it hits Juno like a speeding hover hauler. That man, the angel. Juno chooses to lean into his weakness. The angel must have washed his coat, and thoroughly. He's smart. Finally did his research. The peeper eyes are gone, floated away into the city's system of pipes, an artificial water table. Juno might as well be looking for the city itself. He opens his eyes, looks out the open window, and sees just that. Hyperion is as dark as it ever gets, still tattooed with neon and awash with the distant glow of the dome. Juno is tired. His hands are stained. He has work to do. The last time Juno tried to pull on a contact, he almost got himself killed. Granted, it did also draw the angel out of hiding in the first place. He considers trying it for a minute, busting down the Kanagawa's front door with no invitation and no reservations about what he spits and creases his face. Walking into rush hour traffic over the Tharsis Bridge, leaning up against the dumpster outside his old precinct where the desk duty thugs go out to smoke. All perfect places to nearly die, to lure the angel out again. But Juno doesn't want to, it's the thing. He realizes this with a horrible sinking feeling, a here I go again kind of feeling. He doesn't want to put the angel in danger. So instead, Juno finds himself and finally does some sleuthing. He didn't know how I tracked him down, Juno mutters, and then suddenly he did. He waits for the interjection, but none comes. It's a dizzying return to reality how quiet and empty his apartment is. Juno has no idea how long Benton will be gone. Could be hours, could be months. It's been either and every option in between in the decade and change since he first fell out of the ether and back into Juno's life. Juno misses his brother, he always does, but there's an extra ragged edge to it this time. Benton was starting to feel like part of this case, like an integral cog in the mechanism of how Juno was going to solve it. Losing him is like losing a key piece of evidence or a good night's sleep. He leaves behind a nagging feeling of almost not quite. So, Juno clears his throat and keeps going, turning a monologue into a soliloquy. What changed? He must have learned from somewhere. Someone. Where do you go in Hyperion City if you need a quick lesson in magical thinking? A place conspicuous enough for a visitor on a time crunch, but underground or unappealing enough to be realer than the charlatan benders in every tourist trap on the planet. Damn it, he groans. He knows exactly where the angel must have ended up, and he's not looking forward to following his footsteps. Taxidermy gives Juno the creeps. Juno presses the buzzer, waits a beat, presses it again, practically leaning on the gate with the button under his hand. There are a handful of reasons Juno hates coming out here. A few of them are valid. The aforementioned aversion to taxidermy, the reasonable fear of being poisoned, and some are petty. The old man's voice makes Juno's teeth grind, and the shop just plain stinks, but none of them are going to stop him from visiting every time he needs ingredients he can't sweep off the street. Half the folk in Juno's orbit are sellouts, and the rest are too focused on scraping by to put much stock in quality. The only thing stopping Monrovian from falling into either of the two camps are a genuinely astonishing obliviousness to anything outside his shop, and the 8 total hours of memory he can piece together from his life. But Juno will take what he can get. Yes, hello, warbles through the speaker, a few decibels louder than it needs to be. Who is this? A paying customer, Juno shouts back. Wanna open the gate? I got all these creds weighing down my pockets. Just a moment. There's a thud and a set of quick, uneven footsteps. The gate buzzes open amid a rushed hurry of, quickly, now hurry. Juno remembers Lyle Monrovian as a man too old and too unobservant to bother any more with the little things people do to construct a silent agreement with others not to comment on their age, clothes, decades out of style, boldly receding hairline, the whole bit. Juno knows him as forgetful and fragile, and having lived much longer than anyone would put money on. There's nothing in comparison to what Juno sees when he steps into the pungent lobby of Pets by Design. Monrovian looks like an average guy, getting on in years, with a shock of white hair and no regard for personal space, one who has been shrink-wrapped. His eyes barely focus on Juno for a full second as he yodels a hospitable greeting. His lips are cracked and thin, his skin clings to his bones like wet tissue paper, cut by prominent varicose veins like bare trees against the sky. He is, if Juno had to guess, quite unwell. If Monrovian realizes his own declining health, he doesn't acknowledge it. "What can I do for you, young man?" he asks, the way he always does, simultaneously certain he has already given his spiel and that he has never seen Juno before in his life. Senile enough to not even know a lady when he sees one is good old Doc Monrovian. As always, Juno doesn't have time to unpack all that. It's better than an attempt at poisoning, though not by a lot. "I bought some of your merchandise and I need to see my receipt," Juno says. He really didn't think this through, but the upside to dealing with Monrovian is, if the lie falls flat, he can just leave and try again. "Why, work expense," Juno shrugs and bares his teeth in the grin that used to get him into uptown bars with the worst fake ID on Mars. "Mind checking your records for me? It'll only take a minute, Doc." "Oh, Monrovian's watery eyes drift from Juno to the computer terminal, up to a ludicrously fat tomcat mounted on the wall overhead, and back to Juno. Shouldn't you have received a receipt with your purchase?" "That's what I thought," Juno shrugs. "Must have been the new hire." "I haven't hired someone in—" "Really, I promise, just look me up and I'll be out of your hair." Juno snaps his fingers. "Wait, I wouldn't have given you my name, would I?" "I suppose you wouldn't have, no?" "That's fine. Why don't you just print me out all the transactions you've made?" "Oh," Juno puffs his cheeks and blows out a thoughtful breath like he can't quite remember something so unimportant. "Since yesterday?" "Well, if you're so sure." The old man's fingers crawl across the keyboard and Juno hums a quiet sound of surprise to himself. He honestly didn't expect it to be this easy. "I'm sorry," Monrovian says, not sounding sorry at all, "but there have been no transactions at Pets by Design in the last 24 hours. If that's all you need, young man, please have a pleasant—" "Not Pets by Design." Juno crosses his arms. He looks pointedly at the huge dusty curtain dividing the back half of the building from the lobby. "Your other business, Doc, if you don't mind." Monrovian blinks his small, distant eyes. "We've met before, then." He sounds as resigned as a half-century of customer service lets him. Monrovian claps his dry palms together. "Well, not a moment, not a moment. I'll get you our list and make you some tea in the meantime. Have a seat wherever you like." Juno glances around. There are exactly 2.5 chairs in the room. The only one that seems entirely assembled is covered in loose nails and sits in the shadow of a precariously mounted and exceedingly large horse. Juno meets his glassy empty eyes. "I think I'll stand." "Suit yourself." Monrovian waves his hand above his head. It passes a foot below the pull cord for the curtain, which doesn't even swing with the displaced air from his stick-thin arm. Despite this, he turns, marches towards his stockroom, and walks directly into the thick curtain. His whole body is nearly obscured by the cloud of dust this sends billowing out. Juno coughs. "You okay over there, Doc?" Monrovian reaches up and makes a fist in the empty air and pulls down. The cord stays still. The old man lets out a cartoonish yowl of frustration. "Please!" Monrovian waves his arms and shouts into Juno's face from 4 feet away. "Pay no attention to the man in front of the curtain. Drink your tea." "You didn't give me any—" "I said pay no attention." "I'm paying no attention," Juno says, paying a great deal of attention. Monrovian tries his swing and a miss maneuver at the rope twice more before he drops his hands and knees and crawls right under the curtain. Gentle thuds and an almost musical series of frustrated hoots reach Juno from the other side. His best guess, Monrovian is looking for something. There's a crash like a line of glass dominoes followed by a beat of silence. Oops, says Monrovian. Need a hand back there, Juno calls. No, I'll be out in a moment. I'm just brewing you some tea. I'd rather get that receipt first if it's all the same to you. A metallic rattle thuds like the previous sound effect in reverse, and Monrovian's wrinkled, white-haired head pops out from under the curtain. Juno briefly wonders how the old man stays so spry. He's got half a century on him, and crawling around like that on the concrete floor would fuck Juno's knees to hell and back on a good day. Receipt? What do you mean, receipt? He pulls himself further out by one elbow, revealing his other hand. He holds a small cup of tea on a cracked saucer. It rattles gently with the faint tremors in his spider-veined hand. You, Juno shoves his hands in his pockets and lies through his teeth. Promise to grab me all your receipts from the last day. Official business. You know how it is. Yes, of course. Monrovian emerges from the curtain like a stage magician's trick. He sets the teacup precariously on the edge of the front counter, waves his hand at the cord, and repeats his slapstick vertical faceplant into the wall of dusty cloth. Juno hides his face in one hand as the whole sordid scene replays in front of him, live and in living color. A full 2 minutes later, Monrovian crawls out again with a sheet of paper clutched in his fingers and a small box in the crook of his elbow. I took just one order, so this must be it, he shakes his head. Business isn't what it used to be, I'm afraid. Thanks, Doc, I appreciate. Are you certain you only want the receipt? The old man interrupts. Juno clears his throat, nervous. What else is there? Up to now, Juno has only felt a step or two behind the angel, but it strikes him that he has no way of knowing if that's true. There could be a trap waiting for him in that box, poison dust or a microbomb, or just an envelope with Juno's name on it, containing only a letter the angel had left behind to gloat, and the faint scent of that cologne. We didn't have the item in stock last night, the old man explains, so it was meant for delivery, today in fact. I hadn't gotten around to it before you dropped by, so that's... He laughs a weak, dry little laugh that shakes his whole thin rib cage. Quite good timing on your part. I'm certain I would have forgotten entirely. Yeah, real lucky. Can I take a look and make sure everything's... Now what? Monrovian's watery eyes narrow on the paper in front of him. What was your name again, young man? It seems there isn't one on the order. That's fine. I'm here now, aren't I? Yes, but I can't simply hand off an item of this rarity to just anyone. Rarity? What the hell is that angel after? You don't know what it is? Monrovian's shaky gaze rises slowly to meet Juno's eyes. He's only half there, the old man, but that's more than enough to turn suspicious. What sort of official business did you say you were on? Look, Juno snaps. His patience ran thin one accidental comedy routine ago, and he just wants a single thing about this case to be easy. Keep the stupid package he ordered. I don't care. Just show me. Juno steps forward. That. He grabs the paper. Receipt. The paper slips easily from Monrovian's frail hands. The old man gasps in offense and shuffles away, moving into Juno's peripheral vision. Juno pays him no mind, his focus putting up blinders and everything but the receipt. Paid in cash upon ordering extra fee for same-day delivery. A lot extra. So he's in a rush, then. Juno scans further down the paper. There's a paragraph in headache-inducing tiny type about how non-responsible all parties but the purchaser are in any accidental maimings, curses, arrests, body swappings, or losses of life, limb, or soundness of mind that may result, yada yada yada. Standard stuff. Juno keeps looking. There, a delivery address. It's a hotel across town. If Juno remembers correctly, he makes a note of the room number. Thanks, Doc, Juno begins. As he lowers the paper and turns attention back to the room, he realizes the old man isn't where he left him. Not at all, comes his voice, too loud in Juno's ear. He jumps. This seems like a perfect time to enjoy your tea, right now. For a practically mummified taxidermist/criminal/wizard old enough to have been old news before Juno was born, Monrovian is quick and quiet on his feet. Juno looks down, the tea shaking faintly in its saucer, is brown and thick, and not really tea at all. Juno remembers this from the last time Monrovius was suspicious of him at all. He wonders if the poison angle has ever actually worked, with how obvious he is about it. I actually have to run, but thanks for all the help. I insist. Juno isn't entirely sure what Monrovian meant to accomplish with his next movement. Throwing the tea into his eyes and mouth, maybe. A murderous game of skee-ball with Juno's face, but the cup goes flying off its saucer. Juno has enough presence of mind as the liquid makes a brown arc through the air to hold the paper out of the way. The tea isn't hot anymore, if it ever was, but it leaves a wet, dark stain down Juno's abdomen and across his left pant leg. Shit, Juno swears. He can feel the liquid dribbling down his leg and into his shoe. You treat all your customers like this, or are you just starting a dry cleaning business on the side? Ah, Monrovian says. Well, that didn't work. His eyes flit between Juno and the animals mounted in the shop. Monrovian takes a couple steps back, reaching out behind himself toward a quadruple Cerberus set up next to the front desk. Juno tenses. Now hang on, let's just talk about this, okay? Monrovian's hand lands on one of the dog's heads. His blaster is out and Monrovian has thrown himself out of the way before the two of them realize simultaneously that the dog hasn't moved. It's just how he left it, dumb and glassy-eyed and frozen in a defensive snarl. Huh, Juno says. Monrovian scrambles to his feet. He touches the dog again and again, practically slapping it across its dry, silent muzzle. He seems to realize the trick isn't going to work at the same moment Juno turns his back to move toward the door. Stay right there, young man, the old man shrieks. There is a thud, then a creak. Juno turns around again just in time to see the horse slip off its mount and tip towards him. Oh, God damn it, Juno groans. He's often idly wondered what his obituary might say, but crushed to death by a dead horse is a new one. Juno is exhausted. He's running on nothing but fumes and frustration. He's on a wild goose chase for a guy he can't get out of his head, one which has gone on long enough he's nearing the end of even his own tolerance for self-delusion, and he's covered in soupy poison tea that makes it look like he just threw up all over himself like a toddler at best, or a lady who is a hell of a lot drunker than Juno is right now. Unfortunately, at worst. He watches the horse teeter on its unstable mount, and it isn't resignation that fills him. Instead, he feels the heft of the horse's weight shift whatever invisible strings tie the universe together, and Juno gets righteously and thoroughly pissed off enough to give those strings a yank. The horse rocks slowly back onto its mount, and keeps going. Watch! Juno calls out as the horse tips the other way. With a yelp and an inauspicious crunching sound, it lands on the opposite side. Out! Dust in the air tickles Juno's nose as it settles, disturbed for the first time in who knows how long. He creeps around the bulk of the horse, hoping to catch anyone or anything that might be listening, that he isn't about to see too much blood. Doc? Juno asks cautiously. He sees a familiar tuft of white hair poking out from under the horse's neck. You alive down there? He is answered by a long, weak groan. Great, Juno says. I'll just, take this. He leans down and pulls at the box Monrovian was carrying, split open by the side of the horse's head. Something glitters inside of it, visible through the long cracks in the crushed cardboard. Before he leaves, Juno grabs the phone behind the counter and dials emergency services. He leaves the receiver on the floor, next to where he's pretty sure Monrovian's head must be, under all the horse parts. The operator's voice mutters a faint question, barely audible until the door shuts behind Juno. He gets in his car and peels out of the parking lot so fast the thrusters make a horrible boiling kettle sound against the pavement. Once Juno hits the freeway, he doesn't stop until he's back in the middle of Hyperion. It is only then that he pulls into an alley and looks in the box. If he had been slightly worried about the contents being damaged by the fall, all those fears are erased. A new set of fears settles over Juno as he holds it up to the light between his thumb and forefinger. If this is what he thinks it is, he checks the receipt again, and it absolutely is. A piece of pure masculinite, barely the size of one of the angel's eye teeth. Juno knows what it means, and he can't decide what scares him more. The idea that the angel is going to try to use it himself a day after learning to wash people's peeper eyes out of his coat, or that he just got some for someone who actually knows what they're doing. Juno shifts the car back into drive. He's close to finding how all these pieces fit together. He's sure of it, but there isn't a moment to lose. There is, however, a moment for Juno to stop back at his apartment and change. The dampness of his shirt and pants is starting to itch, and one of his socks is sopping wet. This isn't ideal. It's laundry day. More specifically, it's been laundry day for about 3 weeks. Juno digs through his closet and pulls out a red dress. He hasn't worn it in years, not since the last time someone sufficiently bribed him to go out dancing. It's loose, and when he puts it on. The Juno of a few years ago was clearly eating better than the Juno of today. Lucky bastard. But it's better than making his grand entrance in soaked-through slacks or the rattiest hoodie to ever grace Mars's surface, which are his other options. He specifically does not think about the fact that this dress is a date dress. If Juno doesn't bother to fix his messy eyeliner, it doesn't count. It's a swanky hotel, of course. The angel strikes Juno as the kind of man who wouldn't be caught dead anywhere but with the sheets under a certain thread count, whatever the thread count would be. Like 10? 100? Not that it matters. Juno focuses back on the matter at hand, watching the room numbers tick upwards until he comes to the right door. He knocks twice, a couple of footsteps on the other side, and the door opens a crack. It opens wider when the angel sees Juno's face. He blinks behind his ridiculous glasses, just as lean and unsettlingly, achingly pretty as the last time. There's something off about him, though, a dullness behind the eyes. Maybe he's tired. So is Juno. But Juno has a job to do. The reminder of his exhaustion only kicks him back on track. He holds out his hand where the masculinite glitters against the backdrop of his palm and raises an eyebrow. Delivery? So, the angel says. His legs are crossed delicately where he sits in the chair of a broad desk just inside the hotel room door. He leans his chin against his hand, propped on his elbow, one finger laid curiously over his lips. He looks fragile and surprised, sitting while Juno is left to stand. Juno can't help but feel the angel has him right where he wants him, despite it all. Discomfort makes Juno prickly, makes him want to act smug just to crack the porcelain mask that fell over the angel's face as soon as he ushered Juno into the room. So, he tosses the masculinite in the air like a flipped coin and catches it again in his palm. Seems a little small for a paperweight. I've decided to become a jeweler in my spare time, actually, the angel says in a tone that would be accompanied on a lesser man by an eye roll. But you know what I mean to use it for, I think. And why do you think that? Juno quirks an eyebrow. Sue him. He's nearly won. He wants to hear him say it. The angel takes his hand away from his face and leans forward in his chair. Juno steps back, startled by his sudden proximity to the general vicinity of Juno's hips, and realizes he's failed a simple test he didn't see coming until after it was over. Regardless of vertical position, the angel has regained the high ground. Oh, for the same reason I know how you found me the first time, he says airily, a hint of a smirk gracing his soft face as he looks up from under his dark, undone brows. And again today, I presume? Can you recommend me a new dry cleaner, by the way? Mine seems to have rather botched the job. Don't leave him a bad review just yet, Juno squares his shoulders. Believe it or not, this time around I found you through a thing we call actual detective work. Maybe you've heard of it. Only in passing, the angel laughs. Juno blinks. Of all the ways he struck Juno, it's never been as the type for self-deprecation. Now are you here to accuse me of something, or are you just hoping I'll tip you for your prompt delivery? The angel holds out his hand as if Juno will be stupid enough to hand over the masculinite. No way, he says, closing his fingers tight around the shard. You don't get this until you tell me what the hell you want it for, or who you want it for. It's your client, isn't it? Well, if you're going to be petty about it. The angel stands, bringing his lean body close enough into Juno's space that he can feel his body heat, smell a sudden burst of that cologne. It's Juno's turn to look up, even in the dim yellow light of the hotel room. The angel's face is like the idea of a long-eroded statue, the face the artist saw in their mind's eye as they chiseled away marble to find it deep inside. You want to know who I bought the masculinite for? Tell me. The angel's eyes are deep and steady. His gaze never wavers from Juno's, piercing down to the root of him. You. The angel runs a hand through his uncoiffed hair, and smiles the most genuine smile his face must be capable of. Wonderful to meet you, Detective Steele. I would like to hire you for a job. Juno's mouth drops open. He keeps his hand closed, but barely. Okay, hang on. Ignoring all of the everything about what's been going on for the past few days, and assuming you actually want to hire me, which, what the hell, and assuming I agree to take the case, and I hope you know I cannot wait to bill you into next week for all the shit it took to even get here. Juno takes a breath. What would I need the goddamn rock for? Exactly its usual purpose, Detective, the angel says. Only you will need to find something I've lost. You will need to find something I lost. And what's that? A trifle, really, the angel shrugs. Only my name. Juno stares at him for a full 3 silent seconds. Do you practice those lines in the mirror, or... Juno pinches the bridge of his nose. How did you lose your name? How am I supposed to find it by... Oh. The angel tilts his head questioningly. Oh? Has the great detective figured it out? Curses, Juno says slowly. Damn it, Angel. And the masculinite, you want me to... Yes. Angel nods once and sits heavily on the end of the bed. It's a nice bed, king size, doesn't even squeak under his weight. Juno stops thinking about the bed. He thinks instead about the way the angel's pristine posture sloughs off to one side. Sloughs off him, and all the hard lines of his body seem to barely hold themselves together. I suppose there's no hiding the whole sordid affair from you now, Juno, since you'll be in my head in a minute. He looks up with a half-smile and a real note of nervousness in his eyes, unless that's a lie, too. But Juno has been there. Juno has been just where the angel is now, more or less collapsing under the strain of forces he never asked for, doesn't want, forces that keep taking and taking, running him ragged. If this is really a matter of curses, Juno will know. He has tried a million different ways to run from this power and the whole set of problems that come with it, and he hasn't managed to shake it yet, and is doubtful he ever will. But having been hounded by it for as long as he has, Juno knows when a story like this checks out. All right, Juno sighs. He sits backward in the chair Angel left empty and braces his arms against the back. What do you want to get off? What did you do to get yourself cursed? That's part of the problem. I don't know. He reaches into one of his pockets and pulls out a notebook, one bigger than should rightly have fit. He flips through a few pages and runs a slender finger down one. After I arrived on Mars, I know that much. The notebook looks worn to hell and back. Pen and paper, too, which Juno has never seen a PI other than himself use. He tucks this away as a future I told you so to Rita. After you got hired to stalk me? By the way, Juno snaps, I still don't know who the hell you're working for. You expect me to trust you when there's still some... Why are you laughing? Apologies, Juno, the angel says, not sounding apologetic at all. I simply assumed you would have figured it out. There is no client and no victim other than myself. Juno's eyes flick from the notebook to Angel's face. You were trying to solve your own cursing. Mm-hmm, Angel hums, and I quickly realized I was, he hesitates, upper lip curled in distaste, out of my depth, so I did my best to find someone who might provide insight. As it turns out, that happened to be you. Me? You come highly recommended, Detective. In context, Juno doesn't take it as a compliment, although Angel sounds like he means it as one. I thought if I followed you, I could learn what I needed without ever asking you to get your hands dirty. And now you want me to shove my hands straight into your brain, Juno scoffs. That's a pretty roundabout way of asking for help. I've always preferred to take the scenic route, he grins at Juno, even through his obvious exhaustion. But you're here now, aren't you? I haven't even agreed to this stupid thing yet, Juno grumbles, but he knows he's only delaying the inevitable. He is going to help this man. He is going to do practically anything Angel asks of him. He hesitates again, as though about to impart a weighty secret, a down payment on Juno's cooperation. I was on a job that certain parties involved would be rather less than thrilled to find out about, if that helps any. It might. If you did something worth cursing a guy over, it could help narrow down who did it. Will that help me get my name back? Angel clears his throat. I suppose I haven't been very clear about this. I am not vengeful by nature, detective. I can be when it's convenient, but what I've lost is too precious to prioritize anything except reacquiring it. If someone has taken my name, that could be very, very bad for me. Do you understand? Juno doesn't understand. He can't, not as a person who too often would love nothing more in the galaxy than to stop being Juno Steele, but he sees the desperation creeping through Angel's competent, clever, dangerous exterior, and he feels the truth of what he said. He feels it like a cartoon rain cloud hovering over Angel's head, a looming presence, or absence, a coldness, a blank space where there should be more. He's cursed, he's scared, and he's turned to Juno for help, offering all of himself in an expression of unearned trust. All the fight goes out of Juno in an instant. For all the energy he spent chasing him all over Hyperion, would have chased him across all of Mars if that's what it took, he had no idea what he would do when he finally caught up. This feels like as good a chance as any, and a hell of a lot better than some. Okay, Juno says. He holds out his closed fist and uncurls his fingers. Twin miniatures of the masculine glimmer in Angel's eyes. Do you know how to do this? There's a ritual involved, yes? His voice has fallen low and soft, wonder-struck, as though Juno has given him a gift for which there is no repayment. I have a broad idea. He adjusts himself where he sits, leans in again, close enough that Juno can see the dark circles under his eyes but through his makeup, the flecks of gold in his irises, his long lashes, and parts his lips just slightly, the pink tip of his tongue just visible between them. No, Juno says quietly, meeting Angel's tone. It's, the other way around, actually. I see. He has the decency to look a little embarrassed by the whole affair, at least. Are you going to... I meant... Juno laughs awkwardly. It's a barely audible huff of air, but in the sudden quiet it still feels too loud. You have to... Juno poorly pantomimes the action, but Angel's eyes light up with understanding regardless of his shoddy performance. He holds out his hand, palm up, long fingers steady and sure, and pointing toward Juno like a compass. When he drops the masculinite into Angel's hand, he has to look away. He can't bear to see the deft movements of his fingers, the tendons flexing under the surface of his flawless skin, reaching out to open your mouth. Angel says, nearly at a whisper. It is a gentle reminder, not a command, but Juno quakes somewhere inside himself nonetheless. Juno closes his eyes. He tells himself the whole thing will be less jarring that way, though that is transparently not the only reason, and does as he's told. Angel's fingers are warm and dry, and his skin is as soft as Juno imagined it would be, gently pressing against his chapped lips. The pressure of his fingers is a welcome contrast to the intrusion of the stone. It feels bigger in Juno's mouth than it did in his hand, and colder, as if it had never properly warmed up after a long life in the vacuum of space. Angel places the masculinite on Juno's tongue with great care. The pads of his fingers trail over the line of his teeth. They twitch against his bottom lip like he wants to wrench Juno's mouth open, or perhaps that's what Juno wants, a gentle brutalization at the steady hands of the man whose mind he is about to wander into like a trespasser. Juno closes his mouth a moment too early. His lips catch on the tip of Angel's finger. He swears he hears a soft gasp, but there is no time to be certain. Magic arcs from Angel to Juno, the stone of a grounding point inside him. The wave of Angel's mind closes over Juno's head and pulls him into darkness. It is almost second nature, even after all these years, to push back against the probe of another mind peering into his. Luckily, Angel has no such practice. Juno falls into him, deeper and deeper, until the flood of everything nothing resolved itself into ideas and images. Creation itself in fast forward, the universe of a single man. Distantly, back where his body is, Juno feels a set of slender fingers touch the side of his face. Cold, all hard lines and sharp edges, need and hunger and fear, and no more of that. Now, wild abandon, loneliness, wonder, nothing. I want to be big, the biggest everyone will ever know. Everyone will know my name. Juno feels the loss, but not the lost thing. The absence in a shape that he can't make out. He pushes deeper into knives and blood and the rush of joy crossing a dark rooftop with bounding leaps like flying. There is a strange brightness the further he goes back, unfamiliar to Juno and inextricable from the man's memory of himself. Run, 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 take what you can, cut your losses, keep moving, and moving, eventually. The insistence that you're running toward the universe and not away from something, 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 stops being a lie. Keep running, stop, lost. How to find it, how to find it. Rumors and whispers, the name of a PI. Of course, it's silly, it's impossible. Oh, he's beautiful, isn't he? Juno surfaces from the dark water of Angel's mind with a heavy gasp. His nose is full of the scent of cologne. His ears are ringing. He feels still. The shock of second-hand desire is in seeing himself as Angel sees him, layered over his own heady want. The two are amplified, intertwined, a perfect feedback loop of intensity, so all-encompassing that even back in reality, Juno feels like he might well drown in it. For all the stimuli still overloading Juno's brain, the disorienting effect of watching his own face filtered through Angel's eyes, he still floats in the dark limbo of wherever the spell has sent him. A flash of panic bursts like a single spark in the bonfire of emotion. He can barely string words together over the volume of Angel's desire to kiss him, that Juno can taste like syrup in his mouth, but he manages after a false start once the awareness of his own muscles returns. I can't, Juno chokes out around the stone in his mouth. I can't see. Oh, love. Angel's voice is soft, but cuts through the deluge in his mind like a meteor breaker ship. Open your eyes. Juno blinks, and there he is, his angel, faint smile on his pink lips and a cold fire in his dark eyes. As the last of the spell fades, there is no trace of doubt in Juno's mind that he and Angel are on the same wavelength regarding the intensity of what just happened. He catches the tail end of a thought, a burning want, before Angel's thoughts leave Juno's head, like the last swirl of water in a drain. Yes, Juno breathes. He hopes Angel understands what he's just answered, because there is no more time to discuss it as Juno drags his lean face closer and kisses him desperately. All tongue, teeth scraping inner lips, wet warmth and bruising pressure in his kiss. Juno pulls Angel closer and Angel follows his lead. They run headlong at a paradox together, matter occupying the same space and time, if only they keep at it long enough. Juno is dimly aware of the chair thumping on the floor, of the edge of the desk pressing up against his back, and then a hand at his thigh, helping him up over the obstacle to lay him out on the nearest flat surface, hard under his back. Hands roaming over Juno, with a warmth he can feel through his clothes, slip into his jacket and push it off his shoulders. Angel breaks the kiss just enough to breathe a moment, close enough that the air they each pull in is the same air. He braces himself over Juno. One hand induces a quiet crunching sound, muffled by the thick fabric of the coat. Juno glances down and sees dried purple petals falling from one of his pockets, small clusters drifting across the desk surface in the minor shifts of the air from their movement. Those are expensive, Juno pants. I'll buy you more, Angel promises in a voice as breathless as Juno's. I'll swing between stars and bottle the dust falling from the asteroids myself. You can get asteroid dust at the 5 in cred, Juno grunts, but Angel is already leaning in to kiss the complaint away. A minute later, Angel draws away with a curious look on his face. His own long fingers slip into his mouth and he pulls out the masculinite, looks at it with a cheeky smile. Choking hazard, Juno says. Angel's smile widens. He takes the stone carefully on the television stand and presses his hands to Juno's legs, up under the loose skirt of his dress. Funny you should say that. The skirt falls further away from the aim of Angel's attention, hitched higher up Juno's hips, and all he's wearing underneath is pulled down to his ankles. Angel falls to his knees. His lips close around Juno's cock like the shaping of a holy word. The sounds this pulls from Juno are all praise and no humility, rising until they fill his throat and the whole room, the whole hotel, the whole goddamn galaxy, it feels like. The universe turns on the zenith of Juno's thighs. The spell is long ended, evidenced by the stone glittering out of his periphery and completely uninteresting compared to what is happening elsewhere, but somehow it's impossible. It doesn't make sense. Angel flicks his tongue just under the head of Juno's cock, and his back arches like the doorway to an ancient temple. Yet Juno feels as if he left some part of himself in Angel's mind, a part he can still sense like a phantom limb. He finds the strength to push himself onto his elbows, to open his eyes to the light that comes as nearly a surprise, and watch Angel's dark-haired head bob in Juno's lap. He's framed by the thin red fabric of Juno's skirt. It falls over the edge of the desk like a photograph of spilling wine, waves of red frozen in a moment forever. Their eyes meet. Angel's fingers wrapped around the base of Juno's cock, Angel's mouth passing over his shaft at a delirious tempo. Angel's gaze locked with Juno's, and sparking warmth in him greater than any of the rest. All of it sends him higher, hoarser, closer. His hips twitch up, and Angel takes it easily, like he felt the movement a moment before it happened, like he's still in Juno's head. Oh shit, Juno moans. He reaches down to run his fingers through Angel's hair and misses, catching the side of his face in a clumsy caress. Angel presses into his hand like his touch is a benediction. He pulls his mouth off of Juno in a last long slide, turns his face to press his wet mouth to Juno's palm, and works his hand hard where his lips were a moment ago. There you go, love, he whispers. Juno feels the environment and the heat of his breath. Oh, what? Juno feels the movement and the heat of his breath against his hand. Angel leans forward once more and puts his tongue to the head of Juno's cock, gives him a short set of gentle licks. Angel brings his free hand up to the side of his own face and lays it gently over Juno's. His fingers slot into the space between Juno's fingers. His mouth hangs open. His eyes are sharp enough to cut. Juno feels him and quakes, and finally cracks through his stained glass desperation. Juno spills onto Angel's face, over his upper lip and high on his cheekbone, where it runs down his face like tears, joyous tears, if the expression underneath is anything to go by. Juno sees it, twitches, and spurts once more over the knuckles of that warm hand still around him. Angel unfolds his long, lean body and stands over Juno. He starts to reach for the nearby tissue box, but Juno fists a hand in the front of his shirt and drags him closer. He makes a sound of quiet surprise, but kisses Juno back immediately, ravenously, like he has nothing at all to hide. Can I? Juno mumbles against Angel's mouth, already reaching for the front of his pants. It is unclear to Juno if the man makes a noise of encouragement or if he feels it in the wordless way that should worry him more than it does, but the distinction doesn't matter right now. What matters is Juno undoing his pants, Angel helping push them down, getting his hands on Angel's dick, and feeling the weight of his hips between his spread thighs. He grinds into Juno's hand and against Juno's body, braced over him again. Juno whines at the friction, overstimulation, gilds this impossible series of moments in yet another layer of intensity. He wants more, even as it's too much. He wants every atom of this man, everything they could possibly do to one another. The fabric of his dress begins to stick to Juno's sweaty thighs, his lower body. He squeezes his hands on Angel as the two of them work together. They make a damn good team, Juno thinks dizzily. Angel comes with a sound that could crack Juno in two. It echoes in his ears like a shout, although it was quieter than any of Juno's own groans and gasps. Juno draws his hands out of Angel's pants and lets them fall back onto the desk at either side of his head. Angel hasn't moved except to relax his trembling arms and lay against Juno's chest. In the quiet, winding down stillness of after, Juno puts a hesitant hand on the back of Angel's head. He is rewarded with a small noise of contentment against his sternum. Angel pushes the crown of his head against his chin. Angel says eventually. It seems to take him a try or two. I imagine this isn't very comfortable for you. I left my spine at home today, Juno says, so I'm not too worried. Regardless, I think we deserve a bed. I think we deserve a bed after all this hard work. He pushes himself up and smiles at Juno. It's a new one, this smile, not coercive or coquettish, not predatory, not even lustful. It's just a smile. Juno likes it. He feels the heavy weight of guilt in his gut and the knowledge that he doesn't deserve to like it. Still, he lets Angel pull him to his feet and pull him right back down onto the bed with him, behind him. A few minutes, he can justify that. A few more minutes of being touched gently, like he's done anything good for anyone. It'll have to last him a while after all. Juno can be selfish for now. Would you like to shower first? Angel asks, into his hair. That's it, then. That's all Juno gets. Or, to ease any conflict, we could always share. I'll go first, Juno says. He's cold when he pulls away from Angel, and not only it's in the places where they were pressed together. He's cold down to his toes, up to the roots of his hair. Touching this man was a grounded current of warmth, and now he's been cut off. His knees are weak as he stumbles into the bathroom. Juno spends long minutes under the hot spray mulling over what he felt in Angel's head. Surprisingly enough, the thing he's angriest about, and even with the qualifier it isn't much, is how he let himself be misled by the vaguest business card he's ever seen, passing himself off as a member of Juno's own profession, no less. What idiot falls for that? No. So really, the one he's angriest at is himself. What else is new? When Juno finally forces himself to emerge, Angel is sitting on the bed, the picture of casual expectation, in a clear pair of floral lounge pants. His face is clean, and bare of makeup now, too. Juno's dress lies draped over the desk chair like a dead fish. Folded on the foot of the bed is a sundress made of that one-size-fits-some stretchy material. I thought I could spare you the walk of shame look, though I'm sure it would be fetching on you, Angel explains. I can get your dress dry cleaned. I didn't know what to do about your jacket. Don't worry about it. The jacket's seen worse, Juno shrugs. Angel chuckles. There is a beat of awkward silence. Juno is absolutely the one making it awkward. He drops the towel around his hips and scrambles to pull on the offered sundress. So, Juno says once he's clothed again. Working for Vicky, huh? I've done work with Valis Vicky, yes. Angel nods, which brought me to Mars. Do you think that might be a lead? Can't rule it out, but I doubt it. I'd have heard if something like this happened to one of the Vixens, let alone Vic herself. You're acquainted, then? We can't all be lucky enough to say with instead of for. Juno's smile, it feels like a grimace, which is as appropriate to the conversation as it is unrelated, caused by the big, obvious thing they've apparently decided not to address. Are you finished with your fence? Are you planning to turn me in if I say no? Nope, Juno says. I've got a funny feeling it wouldn't do any good. Angel grins wolfishly. It's an intimate smile. A man looking at someone he not only knows, but knows well. Juno shivers and grabs his coat. If Angel says anything, he can claim the sleeveless dress is chilly with the AC up. Juno, Angel says slowly, I believe I know the answer already, but did you find it? Juno sits heavily on the bed next to Angel, strangely relieved to be talking about business now, and shakes his head. I didn't. And that's the weird part. This curse isn't suppressing your memory. It's like it stole your name somehow. I felt the space where it should have been, but it's empty. Well, Angel says with the irritating inflection of someone about to look on the bright side, that's novel. What is? Being the one stolen from, he says with a facade of cheer that Juno sees right through. Underneath is hesitation, almost nervousness. About that, Juno points a finger in Angel's face. If you want me to work with you, I'm setting some goddamn ground rules. Number 1, no more lies. I didn't actually lie about my profession, Angel tries. At the sharp look Juno gives him, he smiles bashfully. At first I did not lie to you. At first. I did not lie to you at first. I simply let the card do the talking and followed along with your inferences. And then you lied. And then I lied. I need to hear you say it. Say to me, I promise not to lie through my teeth and actively impede my own case anymore. I promise. The whole thing. Angel gapes at him. Now you're just being childish, Juno. Juno crosses his arms and sets his jaw. He has earned a reputation as a stubborn son of a... It's high time Angel learned who he's dealing with. Fine. Angel throws his hands in the air. I promise not to lie through my teeth and actively impede my own case anymore. He draws the words out mockingly. Juno kind of wants to deck him and kind of wants to put his tongue in his mouth again. And you have to say, I won't keep any secrets from the detective trying to help me. I won't keep any secrets, Angel's eye glints. From the detective who has chosen out of the goodness of his heart so kindly, generously, and admirably to help a lost soul in his hour of need. Juno bristles. One more thing. He doesn't actually have another thing in mind, but it doesn't matter. Angel talks over him immediately. Oh, let me guess. His grin is too wide to fit on his stupid, handsome face. Juno Steele is the bravest and smartest detective to ever live. Or no, I've got it. Juno Steele is always right, and I am a fool to have doubted him for even a second. Shut up, Juno says. He layers anger over it to hide the twitch at the side of his own mouth. How can I when you're forcing me at gunpoint to say Juno Steele's cock is... What exactly Juno Steele's cock is, Juno doesn't find out. He was lying before, when he implied that any part of him held a desire for violence to stop Angel talking. All of it was the other option, and one he indulges in heartily. Angel makes a triumphant noise when Juno's tongue is... a triumphant noise around Juno's tongue in his mouth. Juno makes a sound too, but that has more to do with the strong hands on his back and the taste of himself behind Angel's teeth. Juno pulls away to breathe and finds himself on top, straddling Angel's slim waist. Unidentifiable substances lay sprinkled across the comforter, fallen from Juno's coat pockets in the abrupt transition from not kissing to kissing. Okay, Juno exhales, trying to put his brain back together. I should go, work to do. In the meantime, think about what you did to get yourself cursed, and we'll start there with finding out who stole your name. Tomorrow. That sounds like a great plan. Great. Good. Yeah. Angel raises his eyebrows. Are you going to get off me then? Oh. Juno rolls off of him, scrambles to his feet beside the foot of the bed. Sorry. Don't be. Angel remains on his back, arms akimbo, looking soft and welcoming, and so appealing that Juno digs his fingernails into his palms. You don't have to go, you know. It's tempting, he'll admit. Angel with his messy hair and soft pants, looking relaxed and clever and still smelling like Juno a little, he's pretty sure. But Juno remembers the absence in his apartment, feels a heavy knowing on the back of his neck that has taken a backseat for the last few hours. Benton will be back soon. He wants to be there when he reappears, and literally getting into bed with his client? Is that what this is now? Instead of greeting his brother at his return to the world would be a skewed set of priorities big enough to be seen from Deimos. Angel waits a beat. At the sight of Juno's hesitation, he nods and sits up. Don't let me keep you, he says pleasantly. I know you have a life to get back to, even if I've successfully stolen your attention for an evening. Hell of a lot longer than that, Juno snorts before he can stop himself. Angel doesn't need to know he's all Juno's thought about for days. It would be bonus to put the man's ego he doesn't really need, speaking of things that can be seen from space. The look on Angel's face is a testament to that, a smug little smirk that knows precisely what Juno isn't saying. He wishes it didn't make him want to hike up his dress again. Good night, Juno Steele. Yeah, he says again as he pats his pockets at the door. What's the phrase? When a thief kisses you? His teeth and wallet seem to be in place, though. Angel knows by now that Juno can and will track him down all over again if need be. Juno nods, tells the little part of him hoping for a goodbye kiss at the door to go to hell, and leaves. The dress is safely stuffed deep into Juno's hamper as soon as he gets home. The more conspicuous spots on his jacket get a quick treatment with a washcloth and dabs of stain remover. It isn't that he's never shown up in a clear morning after way in front of Benton. It's just that in this particular case, Juno can feel Juno can feel like a radiation burn exactly how scaldingly smug his brother will be about it. And anyway, there's more important things to talk about. No time for that one. Maybe once all this blows over. Once he knows Angel's goddamn name. Despite the glaring gap, Juno knows more about Angel than a lot of people he slept with. He tries not to think about it. The night passes fitfully. Juno tosses and turns. Neon stripes slide over his restless body through the slatted blinds, and he can feel every flash of light through his eyelids like an electric shock. He wishes he could hear familiar breathing on the other side of the room. Benton's absence is never so tangible as when he's almost returned. In the week before Juno's home became happily haunted, he slept maybe a total of 10 hours. He ached and drank and raged until he passed out as cracks of dawn peeked through the dome. At the time, he assumed it was because of the grief he didn't feel, the monstrous joy of outliving the monster. That was also why, at the time, he spent a few solid days convinced Ben Zayton was all in his head. Juno sighs heavily and rolls over, burying his face in the colder side of the pillow. Getting maudlin won't win him any sleep. Guilt is more of an upper than a downer. He drifts off uneasily around 3. Somewhere between 4 and 5, he's awoken by the sudden absence of unease. "Hey, Supersteel," Juno half hears. He waves a clumsy greeting and falls asleep. Juno sleeps deeply and dreams a very good dream that escapes him entirely come morning. The harsh beep of his comm startles Juno awake. For a split second, he expects to find himself in that hotel room across town, strong hands on his hip, teeth and morning breath against the back of his neck. The bleary sight of his own apartment is dizzying in its familiarity. He shakes himself and picks up the call. "Yeah? Jeez, Vic, slow the hell— What? One of my what? Look, don't take this the wrong way, but I really don't care about your fencing operation this early in the—" Juno looks at the clock. "Okay, well, I don't really care no matter what time it is. I'm sorry your go-to guy skipped town, but oh." "Oh." Juno sits bolt upright in bed. "What did you say?" Juno runs his thumbnail anxiously along the seam of his top sheet. "And you said, in his veins, like rot?" In a moment, Benton is visible at the foot of Juno's bed with eyebrows raised. Juno gives him a grim nod. "Listen, Vicky," Juno says, "like hell am I going back on your payroll, but this just so happens to be a case I'm already working on. Soon as I solve it— No, actually, I'm not going to tell you more than that because I don't want to. Bye." Juno hangs up and drops his comms into the blankets. He closes his eyes, pinches the bridge of his nose. "Juno," Ben says. "God damn it!" Juno punches his mattress. "He's dead. The same thing that killed Agate. It's spreading. It's spreading and I didn't stop it, and I just saw him. He was right in front of me and I didn't even notice. I didn't even—" "Who?" Ben asks desperately. "What the hell did I miss?" "Monrovian," Juno says. Then after a breath, "You missed a lot, actually. I'll fill you in, but I need some goddamn coffee." He fills Ben in on most of it. Juno has never been the kind of lady to kiss and tell, but Benton has always been the kind of brother to pry it out of him and make such merciless fun that Juno took 3 separate, quickly broken vows of celibacy in his teens. And that's the least important part of all of it. He can't keep Angel out of the story entirely. The masculinite, the lying, the curse of another color Juno has to figure out in whatever free time he has now that there's another dead body to contend with. But Benton has the presence of mind to keep his trap shut about Juno's infatuation now that the circumstances are this dire. Juno is on his 5th cup of coffee by mid-afternoon and considering actually eating something when there is a knock at the door. As Juno gets up to answer it, Ben fades out of sight. "Detective," says the voice that hits him before anything else. Next come the teeth, leering out between lips that have hovered in the back of Juno's head for about 18 hours, then the eyes, the cheekbones, the whole effect of his disparate pieces put together. "Hey," Juno says. He has never once been good at this. Juno isn't sure how to say, "This isn't a good time," not to that face, especially since he must be here to talk about his actual case, regardless of where Juno's mind went first. "I am," says Angel, holding up a coat hanger with a long, thin sheet of white plastic. "A man of my word." Juno winces so hard he's worried he pulled a muscle, somewhere between the realization that Angel brought his dry cleaning and the knowledge that Ben is well within earshot. Angel lets himself into the apartment. I can tell. Juno shuffles after him. He clears his throat to cover up the whisper-soft sound of disembodied laughter. Progress on your case? Ah. Angel scuffs the toe of his shoe over the carpet, hands clasped behind his back. He looks at Juno from under his eyelashes. How the hell he manages it when he's half a foot taller than Juno, he has no idea, and smiles. That isn't quite what I came to talk about. Is he being coy? Juno wants to dig a deep, deep hole in the dirt and jump in. The impulse only increases when Benton, ridiculous Benton, materializes right over Angel's shoulder. He meets Juno's eyes, then waggles his eyebrows so cartoonishly Juno is certain he couldn't have physically done that when he was alive. What? Juno clears his throat for entirely unrelated reasons. What did you want to talk about? Ben purses his lips, closes his eyes, and makes the most disgusting kissy face Juno's ever seen. I hope to make it very clear, despite the circumstances, how much I enjoyed your company last night, Angel practically purrs. Ben's mouth drops open. The look on his face is the one Juno thinks people are supposed to have on their birthday. And return your dress. It looks lovely on you, though it did look better off. Juno is going to die. He's going to drop dead right here in his apartment, and then he's going to haunt it forever with his brother who will mock him until the day the sun expands and swallows the whole solar system. He doesn't look at Benton. He keeps his eyes strictly trained on Angel. That's not a whole lot better, distracting in its own way. Juno's eye catches Angel's, and he pauses mid-thought. Angel's eyes are quick, as sharp as Juno's. His posture is impeccable, and he fills a room bigger than the space his body takes up. Tangible, wall-to-wall, it feels like. Or that's how he has been, how he was. Now Angel's eyes are skittish. His shoulders slope like he's carrying something far too heavy. Juno feels him everywhere with a deeply inconvenient heat, and there's something off. Something has loosened around whatever Juno left behind in his head. He doesn't quite fit anymore. Juno? Angel says hesitantly. I apologize if I've overstepped. If you meant it to be a one-time... Or, I suppose, if you see it as a mistake... No, Juno blinks, rubs his eyes. He's imagining things. He's too wrapped up in his goddamn case. Too many curses in this city. A city that is one itself. One big curse to start with. Neither, he resolutely does not look at Ben Zayton. I don't want it to be a one-time thing. Angel's face brightens. Juno sags with relief, then shame that he mistook something as simple as, does he like me, for the effects of a killer curse. And I am so glad to hear you say that. He steps closer to Juno and puts a hand on his face. Juno leans in on instinct as Angel's soft lips pressed against his forehead. Thanks, he mumbles into Angel's collar. Juno's eyes dart up, daring Benton to keep making fun of him. He sees his brother's wide eyes, but not filled with mockery as he expected. He looks sad, afraid. Benton points at Angel, a ghostly finger an inch from the back of the man's neck. Juno frowns in confusion. Benton shakes his head, and Juno smooths out his expression as Angel pulls back. I have work of my own to do this afternoon, he says, but I would be honored, Juno Steele, if you would join me for dinner. Juno speaks distractedly again, but he focuses quickly enough to take in the proposition. I'd like that. Angel smiles, suggests a time and place to give Juno his gives Juno his comms coordinates, then begins to make a graceful exit. Juno glances questioningly at Ben again. Ben points urgently at Angel's back, halfway out the door, and Juno looks. All the blood in his body drains coldly out of him. Creeping up the back of Angel's neck are thin, spiderweb veins of mottled purple-red. They're not as dark as agates were, but then again, Monrovians were mistakable for the normal signs of aging on the day before he died. Juno cannot speak. Mouth drier than the Martian wasteland, the door shuts behind Angel. Benton appears to Juno's right. He feels him there, but is too frozen even to glance at his brother. All the anger and frustration and desperation of the whole god-forsaken enterprise hardens in Juno, like sap turning to amber. His throat is full, his feet are rooted to the floor. Dead man walking, Benton comments. Takes one to know one, Juno says without turning to look at him. And that's wrong. Juno isn't the one who makes those jokes. Gallows humor only works if you're the one swinging from the rope. As much as Juno has wished it, that's never been him. Otherwise, it's part of the execution. Ben knows that. Juno doesn't hear him go. There's no disturbance of air, no marker of a spirit there and gone, but nevertheless, Juno feels his absence like a slamming door. Boss! Rita jumps 2 inches off her desk chair when Juno storms in. Where have you been? I've got 3 calls from Mr. Hidalgo. He's real mad about expenses again because he found yarn on sale for cheaper than you put on the invoice, and you promised you'd finally let me show you how to detail emails today. I'm going out again, Juno calls, already in his office with the door shut behind him. He shoves his head in the bottom of his filing cabinet and grabs the sticky note stuck to the back wall of the drawer. Juno reads it over twice. He snaps his fingers under it, and it catches fire. Well, what did you even stop by for, then? Rita asks, through a mouthful of salmon something mush, as Juno comes back into the front office. Bursting in here like a rabbit in a microchip shop, when I ain't even heard from you in... Juno leans heavily on one hand, suddenly flat against the top of Rita's desk. She swallows, startled, and meets his eyes. She doesn't seem to like what she sees, if the way she stops chewing is any indication. Juno looks down at her with a dark, desperate determination. Can you do me a favor? Heights are low on Juno's list of favorite things. This means that even on his best days, the anti-grav elevator ride up to the Kanagawa mansion is unpleasant. As ever, Juno wouldn't be here if he had a choice. Never has he had the same reason twice, but each time he's backed into a corner of one kind or another, self-destruction, coercion, desperation, it all tastes the same. Name, grunts the Kanagawa cousin on security today. She asks it the way every beat cop in Hyperion asks when Juno gets pulled over for two broken taillights. She knows the answer and hates it, and is going to thoroughly enjoy what comes next. Juno Steele, he shoves his hand deep into his pockets. I don't have an appointment. On the contrary, the guard says, you have a standing appointment with the boss. I sure as hell hope so. True to his word, all that time ago, Krisis Kanagawa looks ready to gut Juno the moment he sets foot inside. His teeth are wide, and he shows too many of them when he smiles. The keys of the galaxy's sleaziest piano. Juno, Krisis says in his small, nasal showman's voice. It's good to see you. I thought I killed you. No, that's right. I just told you if you ever showed your face around here. Yeah, Juno cuts him off. You'll cut me into just so many pieces. I get it. Krisis frowns. The lines of his camera-ready face wrinkle and smooth out again. He looks like a different person entirely without the circus act grin. Well, he loses the affectation abruptly. Coming by to lose all your blood live on camera, or did you crawl here to beg your way back into our good graces, because it'll take a lot of work to get there, you grimy gumshoe. Actually, Krisis, I'm here to see the boss. I'm right here. Cute. Juno grins, lopsided in Krisis' face, and looks around, arms out but hands still in his pockets. Where's Min? Min is, as it turns out, down a short hallway right around the corner. She has almost definitely heard every word since Juno got into the elevator. Juno stops himself from smiling. Even a private quirk of the lips will be caught by the cameras. And then he's face to face with her. Min Kanagawa, cold and clever and too smart by well more than half, sits at a modest and well-organized desk. She keeps her space as different from Krisis's as any two offices can be, if the man's habits around clutter haven't changed since Juno was last here. Everything about Min's office is unassuming. Sterile. Juno feels more certain his every move is being observed and noted in here than he ever has in front of the Kanagawa's cameras. Min, honey, Krisis says. He sounds practically pathetic in the presence of genuine power. I'll take care of it, dear, Min says in a voice cooler than a glacier and just as likely to brook an argument. She gestures for Juno to sit in one of the hard-backed chairs in front of her. Krisis leaves, mumbling something about contracts and streams and things that need his attention. Min smiles. To what do we owe the pleasure, Detective Steele? Cecil will be delighted you've stopped by for a visit. I don't plan to hang around long enough to catch up. Juno settles back into the chair. It's the kind specially made to prevent comfort and silently demand ramrod posture. He slouches anyways. I have a problem and I need someone to make that problem go away. Min doesn't move, not a single muscle in her face twitches. And what, she asks, not a question, might you need that someone to do? You know what they say on Mars, Min, on the other solar planets, about how we're a bunch of ignorant idiots who fell back on superstitions humanity outgrew a millennium ago? Juno smirks. Let's pretend for a second, hypothetically, that Hyperion City does really run on fairy tales. I'll give you a few minutes to entertain the notion, Detective. Impossible tales are a staple of my industry, after all. She taps her chin thoughtfully. Though the truth is often more profitable than fiction, and my family's dreams well prove. Juno snorts. Min's face doesn't change, but Juno swears the temperature in the room drops by 5 degrees. If you ran a news station, Min, you might have a leg to stand on, Juno says. Not much of one, but still, reality TV and truth aren't even in the same zip code. If your aim is to criticize my family's creative decision-making, Detective, you would be better off on one of those silly little online review forums than wasting both your time and mine. That's not what I came here to talk about. It was just a fun bonus. I said, let us for a moment pretend that magic exists all around us and that the good people of Hyperion City hold the key to its primal manipulation. Min waves one manicured hand in a dismissive gesture. Juno hears the lock on the door click quietly. Where does that take us? Well, hypothetically, if all that kid stuff is real, and if you were, I don't know, a powerful sorceress, flatterer, and if a wayward friend of the family had an issue, you're being very generous to yourself. That needs solving, Juno finishes the thought pointedly. What, hypothetically, might it cost him? It would depend entirely upon the problem, and of course what that friend of the family, her lips move around the words in the closest approximation of a smile to appear in her features yet, had to offer. Let's call him Juno Steele. Lucky, Min's voice is sugar in a wasp trap. That is a lovely name. Now for the rest of it. Juno scowls. Curse. I need to find where it came from and how to stop it. Mostly the second thing, and I'm on a tight schedule. Hypothetically. Juno leans forward in his seat. He doesn't dare touch Min's desk, but he rests his hands close enough to the edge that he could. And hypothetically, you know exactly what I have to offer, so do it. Name your price. My goodness, someone is desperate, Min laughs, without moving her mouth. The laughter seems to emanate from the room itself, the walls and neat shelves, and the things that have been or will be done and said at other times in the same place. A word of advice, Detective. You are offering a contract in which you state no terms. Someone could demand anything of you that way. Could drain you dry. That would be cruel. That, she corrects, would be good business. However, the services you're asking for cost nothing at all. To you, nothing but a sentence of information. Juno narrows his eyes. The hell does that? I will get what I want, and you will get what you want, and all it takes is one thing. You're going to tell me the whereabouts of Cassandra Kanagawa. Juno sits in complete and total silence for a full 3 seconds. The silent voices in the walls go quiet too. The whole room holds its breath. I don't know what you're talking about, he finally grunts, his fingers clutched so tight around the arms of the chair that they're starting to ache. Loyalty, so admirable. Min folds her perfect hands. My daughter escaped Huzgau months ago to gallivant across the galaxy. You are the only person outside of this family whom she's ever told about that dream of hers. You know where she is, and you will tell me. Turning in a fugitive wanted for an attempt at her own father's life, Detective, is the right thing to do, after all. You want to see justice served, don't you? If your answer is no, we have nothing more to talk about. Juno growls. Min looks like she's won. That is to say, Min looks exactly the same as every other time Juno has seen her. The silence stretches on, coming up against the threat of a following heartbeat, and then, fine. Min's intel is solid. Of course it is. She might not know every corner of this city, just most of them, but if she didn't know how exactly to find someone with a spell book and a grudge, she wouldn't have nearly the stranglehold on this city's magical underground that she does. Here, she says, pressing a piece of old, corroded metal into his hand, this will bring you to the source of your problem. She had held it up to the light and tried to look through the hole in the middle of the in the middle, perfectly circular. Min's hand had wrapped vice-like around his wrist before he could manage it. "Give them an inch, and they take a mile." Min had shaken her head and sighed. "It will show you the truth of things, detective, but you paid for a very specific piece of that truth. Go back down to that surface before you steal a peek into things you really shouldn't, In the moment before Min had stopped him, Juno could swear he could see movement barely in his periphery, a layered, hungry movement over the walls, inside them. When he gets planet-side, Juno holds the piece of metal up to his eye, staring through the hole left by the radiation that has been boring through everything on this dusty red rock since before Juno was born. He follows the trail like a good little sleuth. Like this is just another case. Like Angel's life isn't on the line. "And how do I stop the curse?" Juno had asked at the doorway. Sticking around any longer than necessary would have meant his curiosity getting the better of him, but just the memory of a glimpse of this truth of things had made him nearly sick. "Break the source," Min had said. When Juno had stared at her in frustration, she had simply smiled that brilliant, deadly smile and said, "If you want details, you will have to find them yourself." It isn't as hard as it should be. Just a trek across Hyperion on Juno's weathered boots, away from the floating mansion of Uptown and into a derelict industrial district with the kind of empty buildings Juno played in as a child. He checks his comms. The numbers blink back like a taunt, well past the time he was supposed to meet Angel for dinner. A sinking inevitability fills his gut. It's better this way, for a lot of reasons, but that doesn't make it hurt any less. Angel will get over him and move on alive. The trail ends at the wide, dark doors of an old factory, pre-war by the look of it, the kind of place Juno has a bad track record with. He breathes deep and pushes the creaking door open far enough to slip through. "Hello?" he calls into the dark. The only answer he gets is a thrumming overhead and a strange light leaking through from above. No choice but to follow it. It's as good an invitation as Juno ever gets. The light gets brighter the further Juno walks into the dark, echoey stairwell. It seems to shine through cracks in the wall and ceiling. He puts his hand against the wall at one point, feels for the break in cement where time and pressure and neglect have started the process of crumbling. The wall feels completely solid. This door, labeled 3 with peeling paint, is the last. Juno feels it in the part of himself he wishes he could gouge out. It hasn't steered him wrong so far, except in the ignoring of it. Unfortunately so, for the first time in a long time, he surrenders completely. He clicks his blaster's stun setting off. The scene after he shoulders his way inside, the way they taught him when he was a good little cop, is unlike anything Juno has seen before. His eyes need a few precious seconds to adjust to the blinding light. Once the room comes into view, he sees its source, an enormous, upright tube of searing bright something. It isn't liquid, but he is sure, but it moves and flows and writhes behind the glass. Juno feels dizzy looking at it. He looks away and sees a raised dais, upon which is a huge chair that looks made of slabs of obsidian. On that chair is a woman, old, lounging on the stone like she's never been more comfortable. "Who are you?" she hisses. Juno feels it in his head more than he hears it over the rumbling whose epicenter he has found. "What are you doing in here?" "I'm here to break your, curse machine? Is that what this is?" Juno shakes his head. "Doesn't matter. I'm here to stop you." The woman cackles. The sound lodges between Juno's vertebrae. "You don't even know what I'm here to do. You don't even understand the power you're witnessing right now, do you?" She raises her arms. "I am siphoning life itself." "Oh my God," Juno mutters. "You're monologuing." Hyperion City has gone on too long wasting the power beneath their feet. They believe in their little spells and incantations, their omens of luck or poison thoughts, but they never look at the big picture. None of you. None at all are brave enough to dig your hands into the great glowing powers of the universe. "Great," Juno rolls his eyes. "You practice that in the mirror or something?" She frowns. "Your flippancy may make you feel more powerful, but what do you know of true power?" She holds out a hand. Something deep in Juno's chest tugs, a visceral jerk, but not a physical one. Ah, I see. Shut up. Juno takes a step forward. The light from the glass container flares again, blinding. I see the spark of magic in you, little witch, the woman taunts, but your powers are no match for your own. For my own. You cannot best me, not with your strongest spells. Don't need to, he replies and pulls out his gun. He gets 2 shots off before the light burns his retinas again. When Juno opens his eyes, he sees the woman still on her throne, smiling a little manic, but unharmed. Power, she says. Does not. Juno shoots her. One wrinkled hand extends in front of her body in less than the space of a blink. The laser flying through the air slams into nothing and dissolves into crackling energy across a wall of invisible force. As I was saying, Juno shoots again, the same futile thing, again and again, throwing out a force field strong enough to stop 6 shots of condensed laser power doesn't faze her at all. How the hell? Juno's blaster hand drops to his side. This is big magic. These are the kind of spells that burn themselves out or collapse under their own weight in seconds, but if you can even get the juice to start them in the first place. Juno has never seen magic like this. He's heard of it, still even on a smaller scale, but that would mean... If you would stop interrupting me, she snaps. Each person in this disgusting city, knowingly or not, has access to a limited supply of the universe's magical energy. She gestures at the glowing vat, have taken theirs to augment my own, and am therefore capable of unimaginable feats of power. There it is then, a big jar of stolen souls, siphoned away over days or weeks or months until a victim has nothing left to give. The timeline explains why Juno didn't recognize it the last time he saw something similar attempted. It was clumsy and explosive. Benzaiten didn't live long enough to start manifesting symptoms. Why theirs? Juno asks. It's been easy enough to keep her talking this long. If she's distracted enough, Juno might have a shot. Why? Why Monrovian and Zapatero and him? Juno blinks. Oh, she says, without a note of interest. Were those their names? Just like that, Juno's restraint splinters. It wasn't about him. He'd had a growing suspicion about that, which lends more credence to a few criticisms he's taken over the years than he's entirely comfortable with, or any of them, not at all. Everyone wrapped up in this woman's desire for power was a nameless, faceless casualty. She doesn't care. She never did. Juno fires off a volley of lasers that all meet the same fate. She almost seems to start enjoying it. The longer it goes on, Juno's grunts of futility and the fireworks show they create with every impact. I've had enough of this, the woman says. You'll make a nice addition to my power, little witch. The hand extended in front of the woman closes into a fist. Juno feels the spot in the core of his chest go hot, then cold, biting cold, frostbite inside him growing like decay. He can't breathe, he can't move. Precisely this, is exactly what was always supposed to happen to him. Benton took the hit once, but fate comes back around and takes what it is owed. Juno tries to force on what he knows, on what makes him himself, his brother, his job, his magic. He hates the word, but it is the truth of things. It's in his blood. His. Sarah Steele may have given it to her sons, but once given it has never been hers to control. Whatever holds this part of him intact begins to tear open. Juno can feel it, like he feels when the skin of his knuckles splits, when he's going to die here. He's going to lose. Most importantly, Angel and whoever else happened upon that insidious reach of this curse in the wrong place, wrong time, will die. Dimly over the sound of his own screaming, Juno hears the door slam open. "Don't touch him!" says a voice Juno would know asleep, blindfolded, lost at the end of the world. The cold rot in him subsides. Juno's legs cannot hold him any more. He sprawls on the hard ground and looks up in time to see an avenging angel throw a knife directly at the warlock on the stone dais. It misses. Angel is worse off than the last time Juno saw him then. Only a few hours ago, and his skin has already gone pallid and his aim is faulty. Angel pulls another knife from somewhere as Juno pulls himself to his hands and knees. He doesn't get farther than that. Destroy the source, he pants to himself. He glances around. The woman has turned to taunting Angel now, not even looking at Juno anymore. His eyes fall on the glass container and he knows what he has to do. Angel's arms loop around under Juno's, tugging him closer to standing. "Let's get out of here, Angel says softly into his ear. "You do take me to the nicest places, Juno, but—" "No," Juno shrugs him off. "No, you have to run. You can make it. Get out of here." "Not," Angel says, tugging on his coat again, "without you." "Oh, you can," says the warlock. "Please, lady and gentlemen, the door is open." Juno tears his eyes away from Angel and glares at her. The warlock's withered face is twisted by a smile. She looks well and truly untouchable. Her powers cut her off from any physical harm either Juno or Angel could throw at her. Angel is getting weaker by the minute. The more life he loses, the more power she gains. She's already drained 2 people dry, and that's just the one Juno has met. It all looks hopeless. That's how he knows it's time to do something profoundly stupid. Juno lifts one hand. He empties his laser card into the huge upright tube of life force energy. "What are you doing?" the warlock screams as fractures spread in spider-thin web patterns across the glass. "You idiot! You'll bring this whole building down on us both!" "Look, I've had a really long day," Juno pants from his place on the floor. "So if you could just shut up and get off that weird throne." The walls of the building begin to rumble. Louder than that, what actually stops Juno talking is the sound of splintering glass. The cylinder in front of him flares like a supernova. It glows brighter and brighter until it's hard to look at, a stellar shine that turns the cracked glass to a frozen lightning. The warlock screams again, and Juno is dimly aware of the throne underneath her dissolving into dust, her body disappearing down a dark yawning pit where it stood, an eerie silence after the fall that doesn't quite make sense given the fact that this is the 3rd floor. Juno sees all of this out of the corner of his eye. It feels unimportant next to the searing light widening in front of his eyes. His eyes feel like they're burning out of his skull, his brain screaming, his heart hammering like it's locked in his ribcage, demanding a lawyer. "Juno!" Angel's voice is the only clear thing in the world, the only thing that doesn't hurt. His long, lean body moves in front of the light source like an eclipse. The glass breaks. The surface under him bumps and jolts Juno awake. He has a moment of blind panic about the feeling of being walled in, the sight of a ceiling far too close. He jerks his arm to find them unbound and his blaster still at his hip. "What?" Juno groans groggily. "Oh, he's awake! Boss, you had us real worried there for a minute, running off like that to the middle of nowhere." He turns his head towards the sound of Rita's voice. The back of a car seat, piles of curly hair sticking up over it, neon lights streaking past out the windshield. He is in the back seat of Rita's car. A fuzzy, bright pink jacket is balled up under his head like a pillow. Rita is in the driver's seat. At her side, peering around the seat with an overwhelming mix of confusion and concern, and a lot of other things too, is Angel. There are too many things Juno could say to the man. The color is back in Angel's cheeks. His eyes have a brightness to them that Juno has never seen before but recognizes in a way so primal and intimate it scares him. The curse is broken. Relief floods him, even as questions flood the space behind his teeth. "How did you find me? And why even come looking? And what's your—" "Rita," Juno says instead. It comes out hoarse and weak, but he powers through. "Did it work?" "You mean Cassandra Kanagawa's fake comms coordinations?" "Yup. They show anybody who tries to follow her the inverse of her real location, so by the time they catch up to—" Rita barely pauses for breath before she cuts herself off. "Oh, I mean, I was supposed to keep that a secret, wasn't I? Pretend you didn't hear me, mister." "He's fine." Juno dares to glance quickly towards Angel. His eyebrows quirk up in an expression of understanding. This is an act of trust from Juno Steele, no less, which Angel must understand the value of well enough by now. "I thought you might say that," Rita chirps. "I had it on good authority he was the one to find. And look at him, carrying you out of that big scary warehouse right before it fell down. It was so dramatic, and you were barely walking, and Mr. No-Name here was like a big hero. Not that you aren't a big hero too, boss," she says with the verbal equivalent of a pat on the hand. But he just ran right in there after you, and he was in there so long, and there were all these spooky sounds coming in from the building. I could hear them even over the stream I was listening to. Good authority? Juno asks, picking out the one part of that he can hang on to. Oh! She looks over at Angel, who looks back at her with, Juno presumes he can only see a third of Angel's face, a mix of innocence and polite curiosity. You had a family visit while you were gone, Mr. Steele. Juno pushes himself up onto his elbows with a groan. My brother, he made it all the way to the office. He was real worried about you, Rita says softly. But I don't think he'll be there when we get back. She glances back warily at Angel again. He had to go. Right. Juno lets himself fall back into the seat. He closes his eyes. Another problem for future Juno, on top of the most powerful sorceress on Mars, out for his head, and the complications that come with the way Angel is looking at him. He can feel his eyes, their new and familiar brightness, and who the hell knows what else. This means another bout of waiting for Benton, who used up every drop of himself to save Juno from his own dumb decisions, whose afterlife gets a little closer to lonely every day. Juno is exhausted. There isn't an adjective he can tack on to encompass just how exhausted. Down to the bone. It feels like he's been emptied out and poured back in. Something light and thin lands on his chest. He blinks his eyes open and sees a little piece of paper. He picks it up with careful fingers. Rita has turned on the stereo and is humming off-key to some top 40 tune Juno has never heard before, entirely oblivious. Juno looks at Angel. What he sees in Angel's eyes could fill a book, fill an entire library, the whole net of all humanity's combined knowledge. Juno doesn't have the time or patience to pin it down in speech, but he doesn't need to. Angel's face is soft and trusting. Juno knows that whatever is written on this paper is a gift he can barely understand. He unfolds the paper. His eyes scan the neat looping scrawl, beautiful handwriting, of course, spelling out a simple sentence. My name is Peter Nureyev. When Juno looks up at him in awe, Nureyev winks. They stare at each other for what must be a ridiculous amount of time, really, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when he can see every atom of truth, falling into place in Peter Nureyev's face, when he feels nothing but a warm rightness in his chest and in the fading but ever-present awareness of whatever piece of himself he left behind in that man's head. Juno half rolls off the seat when Rita stomps on the brakes at an unanticipated red light. Nureyev smiles back at Juno. The moment passed, but no worse for wear. I didn't know you had a brother, Nureyev says eventually. The brightness in his eyes almost hurts to look at, but the last thing Juno wants is to look away. Yeah. Juno puts every last ounce of energy in him toward a tiny smile. Remind me to introduce you sometime.